around the Westminster Council District, you may have seen lampposts with an interlinking C, which look remarkably similar to the Chanel logo. French fashion designer Gabrielle Coco Chanel famously had an on and off love affair with Hugh Grosvenor, the second Duke of Westminster, for around a decade in the 1920s to 1930s. However, the aristocrat failed to make Chanel one of his 4 wives. The story goes, the Duke attempted to prove his love for Coco by having her initials embossed in gold on lampposts around Westminster. Each lamppost features a grand W nearby, which many assumed were for the Duke. This story is false. Sadly, the truth isn't so romantic. The W does stand for Westminster, but the Council, not the Duke, while C stand for City Council. Despite their traditional look, they only got installed in the 1950s, 2 decades after Chanel, and the Duke's romance hit the skids. The capital has had many London bridges over the centuries, the first one dating back to Roman Londinium in the 50s. Despite its iconic name, many would agree the current 1970s creation isn't the most attractive of London's river crossing. In 1968, U.S. businessman Robert P. McCulloch bought the previous Georgian Air New London Bridge for just over $1 million. It had been put up for sale by the City of London as it was sinking into the Thames and wasn't suitable for modern vehicle traffic. After the purchase, it was taken apart and shipped across to Arizona to be rebuilt in Lake Havasu City, where it remains to this day. However, the story goes that McCulloch, though he was buying the more ornate Tower Bridge, not London Bridge. Many tourists visiting the capital today still think Tower Bridge is London Bridge because it's one of London's most recognizable icons. This is a false story. The City of London Council member Ivan Lukin, who was the one who suggested selling the bridge, was heavily involved in the sale, has firmly denied misleading McCulloch and insisted the American knew exactly what bridge he was buying. Green Park is one of 8 royal parks in the capital. It was established in the 17th century during the reign of King Charles II. Unlike the rest of London's royal parks, it is noticeable for its lack of flowers and lakes and only having a few monuments, and is mostly grass, trees and pathways, hence the name Green Park. Legend has it the park was full of flowers in the 17th century, and Charles II used to venture from nearby St. James Palace to pick flowers for his wife Queen Catherine. However, Charles was famously unfaithful to his wife and fathered at least 14 illegitimate children. It's been claimed Catherine found out her husband was picking flowers for other women, so ordered every flower bed to be removed from the park. We don't know about this one. Green Park has no formal flower beds, although there's around 1 million daffodils that bloom every spring. The myth of a vampire roaming Highgate Cemetery first appeared in 1969 when some young people interested in the occult claimed to have seen a gray figure lurking amongst the graves. After it was reported in a local newspaper, many people wrote in, each giving a different account of spooky goings-on. One man had a theory that a medieval Romanian king vampire had been brought to England in a coffin in the early 18th century and buried on the site of Highgate Cemetery. He claimed modern Satanists had awoken him. By March 1970, there was a media hysteria with a mob of vampire hunters arriving to track down the Highgate vampire. One man was jailed in 1974 for damaging memorials and interfering with dead remains in Highgate Cemetery. This story is definitely false, unless you believe in vampires. London, like most cities, has a large population of rats. They've been here forever and are responsible for spreading the plague, amongst many other deadly diseases. The saying goes, in most cities, you're never more than 6 feet away from a rat. False. Pest experts reckon it's more likely you're an average of 164 feet away from a rat. Yes, there are a lot of rats in the capital, particularly in rundown areas and around building sites. However, if there was a rat every 6 feet, the streets of London would literally be swarming with them and you would regularly be tripping over them. Back in the 13th century, Londoners would watch in amazement as a white polar bear would jump in the River Thames and hunt for fish. The polar bear was one of several animals kept in cages at the capital's first zoo at the Tower of London. The menagerie included lions, an African elephant and baboons, and remained on site until they were moved to Regent's Park to the current site of London Zoo in 1826. True, Henry III was given a polar bear as a gift by Norwegian king in the 13th century. The magnificent creature was kept muzzled and chained, but was allowed to swim in the Thames to feed while on a stout cord. You may have walked past the Georgian terraced house Cardinal's Wharf at 49 Bankside, nestled in between Shakespeare's Globe and the Tate Modern. On the facade, there's a cream plaque reading, "Here lived Sir Christopher Wren during the building of St. Paul's Cathedral." It's easy to imagine the architect gazing out of the window at his growing masterpiece. This story is false. While an 18th century house is still standing, it's not the one lived in by Wren during the building of St. Paul's. The house was actually built in 1710, the year St. Paul's Cathedral was completed. Historian Gillian Tyndall researched 49 Bankside for her 2006 book The House by the Thames, and the people who lived there. She believes the plaque was on another house slightly west, where Wren did actually stay during St. Paul's construction, which was demolished during post-war redevelopment. It's believed the owner of number 49 retrieved the plaque from the original building and placed it on his own house in the 1950s. For years, the Art Deco skyscraper Senate House was one of the tallest buildings in London, designed by architect Sir Charles Holden. It was built in the 1930s for the University of London, who continue to use it today. During World War II, when Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler was plotting European domination, there were rumors he had his eye on several buildings, and therefore they were spared from the Luftwaffe's bombing raids. It appears the tyrant had quite a penchant for Art Deco architecture, as he was also supposed to be a fan of Duquesne Court, a 1930s apartment block in Balham. Despite claims, the court looks like a swastika from above. A quick peek at Google Maps show it actually doesn't. False story. Senate House was actually a direct hit by Nazi bomb in November 1940, so if Hitler loved the building that much, he probably would have advised his bombers to avoid it. We'll probably never really know what Hitler planned in London. Thankfully, his terrifying vision of conquering the UK never became a reality. Despite being native to Africa and the Indian subcontinent, the parakeet population has exploded in London in the past couple of decades. As these birds are non-migratory, it is believed the London ones originated from escaped parakeet pets. There's a story that legendary rocker Jimi Hendrix is responsible for the booming population after he released Two Into the Wild on Carnaby Street back in the 1960s. However, there's alternative theories that parakeets escaped from Ealing Studios in 1951 during the filming of The African Queen, or many fled from damaged aviaries during the Great Storm of 1987. This story is false. The RSPB said Jimmy's birds probably contributed to the expansion, but wouldn't be completely responsible.